Weekly Commentaries on the Bible and the Bhagavad Gita by Swami Kriyananda. Week 11, Reason versus Intuition. Truth is one and eternal. Realize oneness with it in your deathless self within. The following commentary is based on the teachings of Paramhansa Yogananda. Jesus, when addressing his critics, appealed to reason and common sense. In his training of the disciples, however, he, like all great masters, encouraged in them the development of a higher faculty, soul intuition. For it is only by intuition that spiritual perceptions are achieved. In chapter 16 of the Gospel of St. Matthew, we find Jesus drawing on the intuition of his disciples by asking them who they thought he was in reality. They immediately understood that what he wanted from them was a subtle answer, not some obvious reply based on his nationality, sex, and the like. Peter, it was at last, who understood and answered the question on its intended level, the spiritual. Thou art the Christ, he said, the Son of the living God. And Jesus turned to him, saying, Blessed art thou, Simon, son of Jonah, for not by human nature was the truth revealed to thee, but by my heavenly Father. And I will tell thee also, thou art Peter, which is to say, a rock, and upon this rock will I build my church, and never will the powers of darkness overwhelm it. Jesus was pleased with his disciples for relating to the question on its deeper level. Reason could not have given Peter that answer. The answer came through the faculty of soul intuition and proved him thereby to be a spiritually advanced disciple. It was his intuitive perception, that insight which cannot be shaken by tempests of reasonable doubt, that Jesus praised in referring to him as a rock. The church he referred to next was the edifice of cosmic consciousness. Any outer church institution would have to depend, as in fact the Christian churches have always done, on the level of understanding of its individual leaders and members. Peter's intuitive perceptions could never have been passed on to an outward succession of prelates. Clarity comes by direct soul perception. Confusion results from excessive dependence on reason as the guide to understanding. As the second chapter of the Bhagavad Gita states, when your intellect, at present confused by the diversity of teachings in the scriptures, becomes steadfast in the ecstasy of deep meditation, then you will achieve final union with God. Thus, through Holy Scripture, God has spoken to mankind. Om, Om, Om.
Thank you, Jean. This morning's This morning's reading passage from Whispers from Eternity is number 204. It's kind of long. I apologize, but it has a lot, packs a lot of punch. This is the prayer demand to reach the one highway of realization. Flower of all fragrances, awaken our senses. Lead us not through forests of uncertainty, where many bypaths lead off in diverse directions, twisting and turning, though as it were hopefully past endless obstacles to thy city of light. Take us out quickly onto that inner highway of realization, the spine, which leads directly to thee. O thou unfailing beacon of light, send thy illuminating ray into the darkness of ignorance. Show us the right way, and let us not be sidetracked by mere beliefs and dogmas. Help us to experience thee. No matter what our bypath of formal worship, guide us at last onto the highway of common soul intuition, which leads to direct perception of thee. soaring high above narrow lanes of bigotry and lightly over unyielding walls of religious prejudice. Lift our souls safely up into thy free skies of bliss. And let us meet together joyfully in thy unwalled temple of universal worship, with its dome of the free sky, not structured by man-made, man-interpreted, man-prescribed beliefs and limitations. There shall we raise chants of devotion of thy omnipresence, our hymns made sacred by the simple, direct sincerity of our hearts. Teach us to seek thee by paying careful scientific attention, first to what actually lifts our consciousness, practical techniques of salvation that open our consciousness to experience thee. As we live today in a new age of energy, this of course was written nearly 100 years ago, which has given us physical flight, so let us realize that we have it in us to guide our airplanes of thought high above the dark fogs of mere theological opinions, denunciations, and sectarian squabbling, to see the same one sun of truth, in turn lighting city after city, country after country, continent after continent. Even so, dost thou bless all equally with thy love. O beacon of cosmic light, send thy guiding ray of divine understanding into the darkness of our ignorance, that our soaring consciousness may land safely, incarnation after incarnation, on terrain conducive to continued thoughts of thee. And O flower of fragrance, send us the scent of love, to inspire us always in our search of thee, with longing to climb ever higher into the stratosphere of divine realization. May dreams of thy perfect garden, far above all space and time, but near to us always in our hearts, speed our soul's journey and quench our thirst in thee. I'm continually amazed by Master's use of the English language and how he can put phrases together that just capture things so beautifully. Okay, well, now we'll have a little bit of a switch from the Whispers reading, and I'm going to tell a joke that I heard from Shivani in Ananda Sisi, and I tried it out on my housemates, and we laughed for about 3 minutes. So I thought, okay, now with that build up, I hope it's not a letdown. But Swami said it's nice to start your Sunday service, to start a talk or a Sunday service, whatever, with music, because it opens the heart, and laughter, because that makes people open and receptive as well. So here's the joke. A priest, a minister, and a rabbit went into a bar. The bartender says to the rabbit, "What would you like?" The rabbit replies, "I don't know. I'm only here because of autocorrect." So there's your priest, a minister, and a rabbi joke. Okay, I hope you find that as funny as we did. Okay, so interestingly enough, because I've lived in Italy or been based there for the last number of years, I'm still on their WhatsApp groups, and somebody jokingly said something about there being a debate between reason versus intuition. And so Shivani, who happens to be giving the Sunday service over there, or gave it, however many hours ago it was in Italy, and Jayadev, who both great souls, both great rishis, wise teachers. Jayadev started the Ananda Yoga teacher training in Italy, and Shivani has basically started a school of Raja Yoga where you can go and take courses and be certified to teach all of these teachings. And so they decided they're actually going to have a date and a debate, and for Sunday service. So I look forward to to doing that. But I'm not going to do that. I don't think there is much of a debate. I think intuition rules, at least in our spiritual teachings. It's, of course, it's important to be practical and take the scientific facts and everything like that. But ultimately, our minds cannot tell us everything because they're poisoned in a sense with our emotions and our past experience, even our past lives. And so to get to that place of soul intuition is really one of the nuggets of this spiritual path, because basically that also means attunement and devotion and all of the qualities that we are trying to nurture and cultivate. So I will read to you, I find it very interesting, the dictionary definition of intuition is direct perception of truth, fact, etc., independent of any reasoning process. I thought that was pretty accurate. And but the definition that I have heard studying these teachings for over 4 decades, intuition is the soul's power of knowing God. And the whole of the spiritual journey, our spiritual experiences, all of these things are like a prolonged state of intuition, or that's what we aspire to be. Always, always listening to that inner voice, to our heart, to our gut feeling. Through intuition, we discover God's presence within. And to compare, reason it can be dull and dry and boring, whereas intuition is flowing and it's alive and it's fun, and it comes from direct soul perception. We get confused when we depend on reason for our guide to understanding. We have to go deeper than that. So I will tell a story of Yogananda. Maybe you remember this. When he was having a conversation, I believe it's in the New Path story from Swamiji. I don't believe that Master wrote this in Autobiography of a Yogi. So he was having a conversation with a fundamentalist who said everything in the Bible is true. And Master said, well, maybe not everything. And some of it's figurative. And the preacher said, no, it's all true. It's all true. And Master said, well, what about the snake who spoke to Adam and Eve? And the preacher said, well, back in those days, snakes could talk. And Master said, I bow to the colossal temple of ignorance that I see before me. I have to keep scrolling my notes. Did you hear this story of the elephants in Africa? In South Africa, there was a man named Lawrence Anthony, and he ran a preserve for animals, or a reserve, I guess. I'm not sure what you call them. He got a call that there were rogue elephants, and they were all going to be shot. So he went in and rescued them, and he saved their lives, and he tamed them. And then many, many herds of elephants were sent to him. He would calm the traumatized elephants, and he became known as the elephant whisperer. Now, when he died, 2 herds of elephants, I get shivers just thinking about this, walked 12 hours to his home, all from different directions. They didn't know where he lived. Well, maybe they did, but anyway, they walked 12 hours, all of them, and they held vigil for him for 2 days. And that just brings such an amazing feeling, the interconnectedness of all of our beings, and it's very powerful when we see this kind of stuff happening. There's another story from Africa. There is a man named Lawrence Vanderpost, and he went to study the Bushmen of the Kalahari. You know, the little Bushmen. If you have never watched this movie, The Gods Must Be Crazy, I highly recommend it. So he had a Bushman guide and he was ready to go, but there was no bushman. He disappeared. And he looked around, and he saw him sitting quietly over there. Finally, um, finally, the bushman got up and he took them all very quickly. He took Lawrence Vanderpost and his crew to an oasis, um, which wasn't where they were supposed to be going, but the Bushmen took them there. Um, and at the oasis, um, there were many other Bushmen who were dying of thirst. And so this one Bushman guide had been sitting quietly, and he had heard them intuitively. It was many miles away. It wasn't like he heard them calling. He heard their call, and um, and another Bushman um, who was also working with this man, Lawrence Vanderpost. Um, at one point, he saw a telegraph station, and then he said, "I have a wire in here." So I love that concept that our telegraph station is from our heart, from the seat of soul intuition, and where we call out to God. It's our receptor, it's our satellite dish, you might say too. So we just have to remain open. And and how do we do that? It's not in our head. It comes from meditation, and we have to nurture that. We have to nurture our intuition not through our heads and through reason and practicality, but through meditation. And we become more sensitive, and the more we are open to that vibration. And of course, all of the techniques that we practice on this path, from Hong Sa, or the Om technique, and Kriya, and music, and yoga, and affirmations, and reading spiritual books. These are all things that help us to develop that intuition. I want to tell another story, it's happened to a couple of my friends who moved to Ananda. And the first one, my friend was moving with his whole family, which is a big step. And in his mind, he'd always had this vision of a small community where people could work and pray and play together. And he lived, in the Northwest, in the Seattle area. And when he found Ananda, this is it. And he went to visit, took his family, and they decided that they would move there. And but it wasn't exactly it for him, because he really wanted a smaller community, like maybe 10 families or something like that. So he was driving down, and it's a long drive. It can be 15, 16 hours, usually takes a couple of days. And he heard about this property about halfway down between Seattle and Ananda Village in Northern California. And he decided to stop and see. And it was the perfect property. And the realtor was going to give him a really good rate, like not very much down payment and not very high mortgage and all these things. And it was perfect for agriculture, for building, for everything that you would need in a community. And so he said, let me go think about this, and we'll talk in the next day or two. So meanwhile, he's at Ananda Village, and he's doing what was then called the postulant program. Now I think it's called the life of the membership. I'm not sure what it's called now, forgive me. In Italy, it's called the ashram program, but it's a residential program if you want to really become more deeply committed and live in one of the Nanda communities. This is a wonderful program where you dive deeply into the teachings, and long periods of meditation, and great teachers. And so he was on his way to do that, and it's usually about a month long. So the realtor called him, so do you want the property? I have a developer who's ready to take it. And my friend said, I'm not sure yet. This happened the next day. And my friend said, I'm not sure yet. Um, Finally, after 4 days, my friend was praying at the altar in the temple, and he heard distinctly, don't do it. And, his mind was like, this is perfect. This is a great example of, it makes sense, practical reason makes sense. But he heard in his heart, he heard Master say, I don't know if it was Master or one of the other masters, but it was a clear message to him, don't do it. He immediately called the realtor and declined. And in the years that followed, it turns out that the neighbor, who was actually another member of Ananda, um, was not a good. It was not a good situation. It would have, and my friend said it would have broken me. He's sure he would have wound up divorced and penniless, and it would have just been the end of him. So without hesitation, that's the part that struck me. As soon as he got that message in his heart, without hesitation, he called the realtor. No, thank you. Another friend, also from Seattle, and she had a very good nursing position, and but it wasn't the top. It wasn't like the head pinnacle for nurses. Um, but she also decided to move to Ananda Village, and right as she was offered this perfect dream job, that's when she decided to move to Ananda. Well, of course, she declined it, because she knew by that time that the most important thing for her was to live in a community with like-minded souls instead of being at the pinnacle of her career position and everything. So, but this often happens for people um, when they find a spiritual teaching and they grab onto it, and they feel, this is it. I found my answers. Finally, I've been looking for truth. I've been searching for meaning in my life. And, here it is. And thank you, God. And then right then is when God will say, are you sure? Because look, I've got this beautiful job. I've got this beautiful property for you, or whatever it might be. So many times I've heard this story. So it's an interesting thing. Again, when you're on the outside surface, when you look at reason and logic. And so I actually have to quote my friend, the first story I told you about. And very simple. My friend has a very simple way of putting things. He said, logic is illogical because you're only seeing part of the picture. And it's kind of, when you look at it that way, we don't realize it because our minds are so powerful, and they reason us, and they justify, and they make excuses, and it seems like, well, I'm pretty smart, so I should listen to that. No, it's illogical. It's illogical to make decisions when you don't have all the pieces. And when you are operating from just your mind and your brain, you don't have all the pieces. You have to go deeper. You have to. You have to pause, and even just for a moment. Sometimes it's amazing how quickly that can happen. I had this experience. I might have shared it with you already, but when I was deciding to come up to the Northwest to do this liver cleanse, and it didn't make sense. It started like 24 hours later. It would be a lot to pull together. I had just started work, kind of serving in a fun way at Ananda Village, and none of it made sense. But there was a seed that was like, yes, this would be really good for me. I need to consider this. But then I was busy for the rest of the day. I was doing my job, my service. And when I got done with that, and I got back to my room and I just sat down for a second to meditate. It didn't take long. I just said, okay, God, I don't know. What do you think? And immediately I got the word, you won't regret it. And I thought, that's enough for me. That did not come from my head. I knew that it came from that deep place of intuition, of soul perception, of recognizing real truth. So what we are striving to nurture is this partnership, this relationship with God. God is our mother, God is our friend, God is our beloved, God is our father. But God is, and of course, when I say God, I don't mean this old man on the throne judging you. It's that consciousness, higher consciousness. It's awareness. We feel it when we're in nature. We feel it when we're absorbed in a beautiful piece of music. We feel it, of course, when we're meditating. When the walls go down, and we feel that that we are a part of all there is. That we are part of that oneness. Just see. Yeah, so I just want to say also that we have so many things to work on in our lives. I do anyway. Attachments and fear and getting rid of old garbage and all that stuff. But really, the need for intuition is the cornerstone of these teachings. It's a divine experience, and it's the way to nurture it is through meditation and attunement with our gurus. Now, Swami Kriyananda always operated from that place. That was his guiding light, and his attunement with Master was phenomenal. And he always checked in, and he wasn't afraid to do things that might have seemed illogical or unreasonable, because he always knew in his heart that what he was doing was coming from that soul intuition, from attunement with Master, and he would never do anything without that divine guidance. So we'll just keep working on it every day in our meditations as we're working on everything else, and we know that we're not alone, that we're all trying to become clearer channels and more attuned to higher guidance, and we're all trying to not live down in the world of senses and desires and materialism, but we're trying to lift our consciousness up. So when in doubt, just, even if you have to do it with your finger, put your finger on the spiritual eye, concentrate on the spiritual eye. If you start to feel sad or frustrated or afraid, just quickly and give it a good, till you really feel it. And sometimes I'm like, but not so much anymore. Okay, well, I'm going to end with this song. It's called Why, and I think I have the words. Nope, I don't. And somehow it disappeared also, so just give me one moment. Okay. Just one moment. I had it all queued up, but something happened. Well, maybe have to do something else because I don't want to take time to. Let's just sit for a moment. Close your eyes. And again, draw your attention to the spiritual eye. This is also a story that Swami wrote called The Land of Golden Sunshine, I believe. Um, all right. There lived a tender maid in a far-off country. The strangeness of this world made her sigh. Her friends asked their fathers for money and clothes, but all she could ask was why. She saw the solemn clouds gathered watching a rainbow. The bright rays of their joy filled the sky. Her teachers explained it all wisely away, but still her heart wondered why. She saw the silent stars thrill the night with their gladness. They seemed some wondrous truth to imply. Her elders all slept, but the magic of night awoke her to ponder why. She saw a mother smile as she tended her baby, a widow weep that love had to die. The joy of new friends and the sadness of parting, all these made her ask God why. One night into her heart stole the secret of oneness. the bond not even time can untie. For love then possessed her and made her his own. In love she at last learned